Okay. Next thing, ask you to do a fundamental triangle between several pairs of points. Now, we only had time in class to do one pair of points, so I chose this point and this point. -2 1/4, -1 1/2. The x equals -2 and x equals -1 points of the graph. And there are actually two fundamental triangles. You draw the segment between the points, right there's the segment. Then you draw the legs parallel to the coordinate axes. Now you can draw it above this segment or below this segment with legs parallel to the axes. So somebody said, oh, mine didn't look like that. Well, the first thing we did when we did these was we drew it both above and below. So, you might want to review that a little bit, but it's easy to understand. So it wouldn't matter if you drew it below, it would just be like from here to here up, okay? And you'd have the same numbers on the vertical leg and the horizontal leg. Okay, so what do? Right there are the 2 points. Now I've got an enlarged picture. -2 1/4, that's this point. -1 1/2, that's this point. Right there are the coordinates. So we now figure out the rise, and we're going from this point to this point. Okay, usually we go from left to right. Okay, the rise is going to be the y-coordinate of the latter minus the y-coordinate of the former, and make sure you understand why that is. We talked about it quite extensively. But you do 1/2 minus 1/4, and that is 1/4. And the run, you do the later minus the earlier x-coordinate, the one you're going to minus the one you're at. -1, the one you're going to, minus the -2 where you are to start with, and you get 1. Now it's very clear that, from along this segment here, you're going from x equals -1 to x equals, from x equals -2 to x equals -1, and that is a displacement of 1. Going from 1/4 up to 1/2, you've got to go up 1/4, and people can be a little shaky on fractions, so make sure you understand why that is. Okay. Then you calculate the slope. Rise divided by run. Well, that's very easy. 1/4 divided by 1. The rise is 1/4. The run is 1. The rise is how far you go in the vertical direction, your displacement in the vertical direction from the first point to the second. Your run is displacement in the x direction from the first point to the second. There we have it. Now, big deal. Just a word in your vocabulary at this point. The idea of a rate of change. And I stated in class that this is probably the most important mathematical concept you will ever see. Don't appreciate it now, and you won't fully appreciate it unless you master the calculus. Not everybody is on track in a curriculum where you need to do that, so most people probably won't. But it's the fundamental concept of the calculus, fundamental concept of the widest variety of mathematical applications. Now, some other people might say there are other concepts that are extraordinarily important, but everybody would say that, okay, it's hard to decide which one is really the most important. I think the majority of people would say that one is. Okay. There's no right or wrong answer to that question. Okay, so anyhow, the average rate, this is the average rate of change as stated on the worksheet. It's the average rate of change of y with respect to x between x equals -2 and x equals -1. Now there's a whole universe in this statement right here. And of course we're not going to explore that whole universe in a pre-calculus class, but we're going to prepare you to explore it to whatever extent it's important to you in the future. Okay, so make sure you understand that terminology. Make sure you're used to that terminology. You won't totally understand it just by using it, but get used to using it. Get used to recognizing it and what definition of that quantity is.